The massive silver ship appeared above Earth's moon without warning. Its hull stretched for miles, covered in symbols that glowed with soft blue light. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of humanity's newest space station as smaller ships emerged from the mothership like metal insects. "Admiral, we're getting a transmission," Communications Officer Torres reported from his station. It's in perfect English." Admiral Marcus Webb stepped forward, his weathered face grim. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing a tall creature with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Its head was elongated, with large black eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. When it spoke, its voice was calm and measured. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am Ambassador Zethkari of the Galactic Confederation. We have observed your species has achieved faster-than-light travel. According to the laws of war established 3,000 years ago, you must now be formally integrated into galactic society." Admiral Webb glanced at Captain Chen before responding. "Ambassador, we appreciate the contact. What exactly does this integration involve?" Zethkari's expression remained neutral. "Your species will choose a representative fleet of 12 vessels. Our fleet will do the same. We will engage in honorable combat at the coordinates we provide. The victor determines the terms of your species' role in the Confederation. This is how it has always been done." The bridge fell silent. Captain Chen stepped forward. "You want us to fight you? Why?" "It is the way," Zethkari replied simply. "Strength determines position. Honor determines respect. Your fleet will meet ours in 7 Earth days. Prepare vessels of equal size to ours. No more, no less. Single combat between matched opponents is the foundation of civilized warfare." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew staring at a blank screen. Admiral Webb turned to his staff. "Get me President Martinez immediately, and pull up everything we have on military doctrine." 3 hours later, Earth's leadership gathered in the secure conference room beneath the Pentagon. President Elena Martinez sat at the head of the table, surrounded by military leaders and scientists. "Let me understand this correctly," she said, reading from a tablet. "These aliens want to fight us with 12 ships against 12 ships, and whoever wins gets to decide humanity's future in their galactic community?" "That appears to be correct, Madam President," Webb confirmed. "They seem to have very specific rules about how wars should be fought." Dr. Sarah Kim, the chief xenobiologist, leaned forward. "From what we could analyze of their transmission, their technology is clearly superior to ours. Those ships are massive. If we play by their rules, we lose." General Harrison, the Army Chief of Staff, nodded grimly. "Their 12 ships probably outgun our entire space fleet combined. This isn't a fight we can win conventionally." President Martinez was quiet for a long moment. "What are our options?" Admiral Webb exchanged glances with the other officers. "Well, ma'am, they said 12 ships. They didn't say what kind of ships." Captain Chen, who had been invited to the meeting, spoke up. "The new drone fighters we've been testing, they're technically ships. Small ones, but ships." "How many do we have operational?" the president asked. 837, Chen replied. "Each one is unmanned, fast, and carries enough firepower to disable a target without destroying it." Dr. Kim looked confused. "But they said 12 ships. Equal numbers." Webb smiled grimly. "They said we should bring 12 ships to match their 12. They never said we couldn't bring additional support craft." President Martinez leaned back in her chair. "You're suggesting we reinterpret their rules?" "I'm suggesting we follow their rules exactly as they stated them," Webb replied. 12 ships meet 12 ships. Everything else is logistics." 5 days later, the human fleet assembled at the coordinates Zethkari had provided. 12 human vessels hung in space, facing 12 alien ships that dwarfed them in size. The alien vessels were works of art, sleek and beautiful, clearly designed for ceremonial combat as much as actual warfare. Admiral Webb commanded the human flagship, a converted research vessel that looked tiny next to the alien craft. But hidden in the cargo bays of each human ship were dozens of drone fighters, powered down and waiting. Zeth Kari's voice came across the communication channel. "Humans of Earth, are you prepared for honorable combat?" "We are," Webb replied. "Shall we begin?" "By ancient tradition, we fire first. Prepare to receive our challenge." The alien ships moved forward in perfect formation, their weapons charging with brilliant light. They fired simultaneously, sending beams of energy toward the human ships. "Now," Webb ordered quietly. The cargo bays of the human ships opened like flowers blooming in space. Hundreds of small craft poured out, moving in swarms that twisted and turned in patterns no organic pilot could manage. The drone fighters were too small and fast for the alien weapons, which had been designed to target large vessels in formal combat. The swarm descended on the alien fleet like angry bees. Rather than trying to destroy the beautiful alien ships, the drones targeted specific systems. Engine ports were sealed with quick-setting foam. Weapon arrays were covered with metallic nets. Communication arrays were carefully dismantled by robots no bigger than a person's hand. Within minutes, the entire alien fleet hung motionless in space, completely disabled but undamaged. Zeth Kari's ship was the last to fall silent. When communication was restored, his voice carried shock and confusion. "What? What have you done? This is not how combat works. Where is the honor? Where is the single combat between matched opponents?" Admiral Webb's response was calm. "Ambassador, you asked for 12 ships to face 12 ships. That's what you got. You never specified what those ships could carry or what tactics we could use. We followed your rules exactly. But this is not warfare. This is... Zeth Kari struggled for words. "This is how humans fight," Webb replied. "We use every advantage we have. We don't fight fair when the stakes are our entire species' future." The communication channel crackled with excited alien voices speaking in languages the human computers couldn't translate. When Zeth Kari spoke again, his voice was different, uncertain. "The Confederation Council must hear of this. Never in 3,000 years has anyone interpreted the laws of war in such a way." "We didn't break your laws," Captain Chen added from her position. "We just didn't let them trap us into losing." As the human ships began collecting the disabled alien vessels for safe return, Admiral Webb wondered what they had started. The aliens seemed genuinely confused by human tactics. In trying to follow their rules while still protecting humanity, had they accidentally changed everything? The alien fleet was returned undamaged within hours, but something fundamental had shifted in the galaxy. Word of the human incident began to spread across star systems, carried by traders and diplomats who couldn't believe what they were hearing. For the first time in 3 millennia, someone had found a way to win without playing the game the way it was supposed to be played, and the galaxy would never be the same. The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In the great halls of the Confederation Council, representatives from dozens of species gathered in emergency session. The chamber buzzed with confused voices, speaking in languages that had evolved across distant stars. Overlord Karthek of the Zephyrian Empire stood 12 feet tall, his crimson scales catching the light as he addressed the assembly. His species had ruled through strength for 10,000 years, never knowing defeat in honorable combat. "This cannot stand," his deep voice rumbled through the chamber. "These humans have made a mockery of everything we hold sacred. They fight without honor, without courage, hiding behind machines, while real warriors stand ready for battle." Ambassador Zeth Kari shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The defeat still stung, not because they had lost, but because they couldn't understand how they had lost. Overlord, perhaps we should study their methods before we act. They did follow the letter of our laws, even if not the spirit. Karthek's laugh was like grinding stone. Laws without honor are meaningless words. My warriors will show these humans how real soldiers fight. We will land on their colonies and challenge them properly, on the ground, warrior to warrior. Then we shall see how brave they are without their swarms of metal insects. 3 days later, Zephyrian dropships descended on the human colonies of New Shanghai, Terra Nova, and Kepler's Rest. The Zephyrians were magnificent warriors, each one 7 feet tall with natural armor plating and strength that could crush steel. They had conquered 47 worlds through personal combat, their honor code requiring them to face their enemies eye to eye. Colonel James Murphy watched the alien ships land from his command center on Terra Nova. The Zephyrians came with great ceremony, planting banners and forming ranks in the open fields outside the main settlement. Their leader, War Chief Braktul, broadcast a formal challenge. Humans of Terra Nova, I am War Chief Braktul of the 3rd Zephyrian Legion. We claim this world by right of conquest. Send forth your greatest warriors to meet us in honorable combat, or surrender your people to slavery. Murphy looked at his staff officers, all of them career soldiers who had served in Earth's final conflicts before humanity reached the stars. Captain Lisa Park, a former Special Forces operator, grinned. Sir, are they really standing in formation in an open field, demanding single combat? Appears so, Murphy replied. Thoughts? Sir, with respect, these aliens have never fought humans before, Park said. They don't know what they're asking for. The human response came not from the military base, but from the colony's emergency broadcast system. Every screen, radio, and communication device on Terra Nova carried the same message, delivered by an elderly woman sitting in what appeared to be her kitchen. This is Mayor Sarah Collins of Terra Nova Colony. To the Zephyrian forces currently threatening our community, we reject your challenge. We are not warriors bound by your codes of honor. We are farmers, teachers, engineers, and families trying to build a life on a new world. You want to fight us? You'll have to find us first. The broadcast ended, and the colony seemed to go silent. War Chief Braktul was confused, but not deterred. If they will not meet us with honor, we will take their settlement by force. Warriors, advance. The Zephyrian Legion marched toward the colony in perfect formation, their weapons powered and ready. They expected to find human soldiers waiting behind barricades, ready for a proper siege. Instead, they found empty buildings and abandoned streets. Where are they? Lieutenant Sektar asked his commander. The thermal scans showed thousands of humans here just hours ago. Braktul studied the empty settlement through his helmet display. Every building was intact, but there were no signs of life. Spread out. Search every structure. They must be hiding. The Zephyrians moved through the colony in small groups, their heavy footsteps echoing off empty walls. They were trained for frontal assault, for breaking enemy lines through superior firepower and strength. They had never fought an enemy that simply wasn't there. The first attack came from beneath their feet. A manhole cover exploded upward, sending shrapnel into the leg joints of a Zephyrian patrol. 3 warriors stumbled, their armor damaged but not penetrated. Before they could react, human figures emerged from storm drains and maintenance tunnels, fired weapons that seemed too small to be dangerous, then vanished back underground. Report, Braktul demanded over the communication channel. Minor damage to leg servos, came the reply. The attackers fled before we could engage properly. Sir, their weapons, they're not trying to kill us. They're targeting our equipment. More attacks followed over the next hour. Windows would suddenly shatter as small projectiles struck power packs and sensor arrays. Doors would burst open to reveal humans who threw strange devices before disappearing into buildings that seemed to have no back exits. The devices released sticky foam that clogged weapon barrels and vision ports. The Zephyrians found themselves constantly looking over their shoulders, jumping at shadows, never knowing where the next attack would come from. Every doorway could hide an enemy. Every pile of garbage might conceal a trap. Even the children's playground equipment turned out to be hollow, hiding human fighters who could strike and vanish in seconds. "This is not warfare," Sektar complained as his squad tried to clean foam from their equipment for the 5th time. "Where is the honor in this? Where is the courage? They strike from shadows like cowardly insects." War Chief Braktool's frustration grew with each passing hour. His warriors were trained to face enemies who would stand and fight, not ghosts who appeared only long enough to cause problems before melting away. The constant tension was wearing on troops who had never experienced anything like this. As night fell, the real problems began. The Zephyrians had excellent night vision, but they were not prepared for an enemy that had intimate knowledge of every tunnel, every building, every hiding place in their own colony. The humans moved through their settlement like water, flowing around Zephyrian patrols, striking at exposed flanks, then vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. Sleep became impossible for the Zephyrian forces. Every sound could be an attack. Every shadow might hide a human fighter. The warriors who had conquered planets through strength and courage found themselves afraid to close their eyes. On the 3rd day, Braktool received a communication from an unexpected source. Mayor Collins appeared on his command screen again, still sitting in her kitchen. "War Chief Braktool, you and your warriors look tired. We've been watching you through our security cameras. You haven't slept in days." "Show yourself, coward," Braktool snarled. "Face me in honorable combat." Collins smiled sadly. "Son, I'm 73 years old. I have grandchildren. You want to fight someone who could be your grandmother? That's not honor. That's just picking on old people. Then send your warriors to face mine." "We don't have warriors," Collins explained patiently. "We have Bob, who fixes the water treatment plant. We have Dr. Martinez, who runs our medical clinic. We have 15-year-old Jamie Chen, who's really good with computer systems. None of them are warriors by your definition, but every one of them knows how to fight for their home." Braktool felt something he had never experienced before, confusion mixed with a growing fear. "You cannot win this way. You have no honor." "Honor doesn't keep my grandchildren safe," Collins replied. "Honor doesn't protect our homes. You came here threatening to enslave us. We're fighting for our lives using every advantage we have. If that's not honorable enough for you, maybe you should have thought about that before you threatened to enslave families." The communication ended, leaving Braktool staring at a blank screen. Around him, his warriors waited for orders, but for the first time in his career, the war chief didn't know what to order. How do you fight an enemy that won't fight fair? How do you conquer people who refuse to be conquered properly? The reports from the other 2 colonies were similar. Human defenders who wouldn't stand and fight, who used their own homes as weapons, who turned every advantage of terrain and knowledge against invaders who expected honorable battle. For the first time in Zephyrian history, an entire legion was being defeated by an enemy that refused to play by the rules of war. And worse, Braktool was beginning to wonder if maybe the humans had a point. The emergency session of the Galactic Confederation Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered in the massive crystal chamber of the neutral world Nexus Prime, their faces showing emotions ranging from confusion to outright fear. High Chancellor Veltaran of the Altarian hegemony called the assembly to order with 3 sharp chimes of the ceremonial gong. Her species had maintained galactic peace for centuries through careful application of the ancient laws of war. "Fellow beings," her melodic voice carried across the chamber, "we face an unprecedented crisis. The human species has violated not just our laws, but our fundamental understanding of how civilized warfare operates. War Chief Braktul's reports from the human colonies paint a disturbing picture. The massive Zephyrian shifted uncomfortably in his reinforced chair. Dark circles under his eyes showed the strain of the past weeks. High Chancellor, with respect, disturbing doesn't begin to describe what these humans are doing. They fight without honor, without courage, without any regard for proper military conduct. Perhaps you could explain for the Assembly, Veltaran requested. Braktul stood, his 12-foot frame commanding attention. They hide among their own civilians. They use their children as message runners. They booby-trap medical supplies. Yesterday, one of my warriors was attacked by an elderly female wielding what appeared to be kitchen utensils modified into weapons. When we demanded she face our champion in single combat, she laughed and threw soup in his face before disappearing into a ventilation shaft. A ripple of shocked whispers ran through the assembly. Ambassador Krelak of the Sarathi Collective raised a tentacle. Surely this is exaggeration. No civilized species would use non-combatants in warfare. That's just it, Braktul replied grimly. They don't seem to distinguish between combatants and non-combatants. Every human, from their eldest to their youngest, appears to consider themselves part of their defense force. They all fight. They all hide. They all use tactics that our training never prepared us for. High Chancellor Veltaran accessed her datapad. I propose we cut their communication networks and impose standard military protocols. Without coordination, even these irregular tactics will fail. The decision was made within hours. Confederation jamming ships moved into position around human space, cutting off faster-than-light communications between Earth and its colonies. Military commanders across the galaxy smiled with satisfaction. Finally, they could impose proper order. The smiles lasted exactly 18 hours. Captain Jennifer Walsh of the Confederation Communications Authority was the first to notice something wrong. She was monitoring routine traffic between member worlds when strange signals began appearing on previously secure channels. "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "we're getting unauthorized transmissions on military frequencies. The signals are coming from everywhere." Walsh frowned at her displays. "Define everywhere, Lieutenant." "Literally everywhere, Captain. Every relay station, every communications satellite, every ship in the fleet. The signals appear to be originating from our own equipment." The first broadcast began at 0800 Standard Galactic Time, transmitted simultaneously across every military channel in Confederation space. "Good morning, Galaxy," a cheerful human voice announced. "This is Radio Free Terra, broadcasting live from, well, everywhere. We're bringing you the truth that your leaders don't want you to hear." Walsh tried to cut the transmission, but found her controls unresponsive. "How are they doing this?" the human voice continued. "Did you know that the High Chancellor of the Altarian hegemony owns 17 luxury planets while her people live in underground warrens? Or that the Zephyrian Empire's warrior code conveniently excludes mention of the 40 billion civilians they've enslaved over the past century?" Across the galaxy, military personnel found themselves listening to information that had been classified for generations. The humans seemed to have access to every secret file, every hidden treaty, every corrupt deal that had been buried in Confederation archives. "But wait, there's more," the broadcast continued with disturbing cheerfulness. "We've also got entertainment. Ever wonder what music sounds like when it's not filtered through your species' cultural ministry? Check this out." The next sound that filled Confederation communication channels was unlike anything most galactic citizens had ever heard. Human music, raw and emotional, without the careful modulations and approved themes that dominated galactic culture. On the industrial world of Mechanis 7th, young Altarian workers stopped their assembly tasks to listen to something called rock and roll. For the first time in their lives, they heard music that spoke of rebellion, of questioning authority, of being more than just cogs in a machine. In the crystal spires of the Sarathi Collective, Adolescent beings discovered human literature through dramatic readings broadcast over their educational networks, stories of individuals standing against impossible odds, of questioning the wisdom of elders, of choosing personal freedom over social stability. The effect was immediate and terrifying to the Confederation leadership. Dr. Elena Vasquez, head of the Human Cultural Warfare Division, watched the reports streaming in from across the galaxy with professional satisfaction. Her team of anthropologists, psychologists, and communications specialists had spent months studying Confederation society, looking for pressure points. "Report," she requested during the daily briefing. "Ma'am, we're seeing spontaneous demonstrations on 47 worlds," her aide reported. "Young Altarians are demanding to know why they can't choose their own career paths. Sarathi adolescents are questioning why their thoughts are monitored by the collective. Even some Zephyrian warriors are asking why honor requires them to follow orders without question." Dr. Vasquez nodded grimly. "Any violent responses from authorities?" "Some, ma'am. But here's the interesting part. When local security forces crack down on protesters, we immediately broadcast footage of the suppression along with human commentary about freedom and individual rights. The crackdowns are just creating more sympathy for the protesters." Meanwhile, in a secure facility beneath the Swiss Alps, 16-year-old Marcus Chen put the finishing touches on his latest project. Marcus was what Earth's military politely called a digital native, someone who had grown up completely immersed in information technology. "Operation Cultural Virus is proceeding ahead of schedule," he reported to Admiral Webb via encrypted channel. "I've managed to embed human cultural content in the software updates for every major Confederation system. Every time they try to purge our broadcasts, the next software patch will restore them and add new content." "What kind of content?" Webb asked. Marcus grinned. "Human movies, sir. Specifically movies about underdogs overthrowing oppressive systems. I've got V for Vendetta queued up for the Altarian networks, Braveheart for the Zephyrian military channels, and The Matrix for the Sarathi collective. Oh, and I included subtitles in every major galactic language." The effects were beyond anything the humans had hoped for. Within days, young beings across the galaxy were using human phrases, humming human songs, and asking questions their societies had never encouraged. On the warrior world of Zephyr Prime, young cadets began questioning why honorable combat required them to die for causes they didn't understand. On the hive worlds of the Sarathi collective, individuals began asserting personal identity in ways that confused and alarmed their leaders. High Chancellor Veltarin called another emergency session, but this time the chamber was filled with different voices. Representatives arrived to find their aides humming alien melodies and quoting strange human poetry about freedom and resistance. "How do we stop this?" Overlord Karthek demanded. "Our young warriors are infected with human ideas about individual choice and questioning authority. Some of them are refusing direct orders, claiming they have a right to think for themselves." Ambassador Zethkari looked exhausted. "We can't stop it. Every time we shut down one transmission, 10 more appear. The humans have turned our own communication networks against us. Worse, their ideas are spreading faster than we can contain them." "Then we destroy their networks entirely," Karthek snarled. "With what?" Veltarin asked quietly. "They're not using their networks anymore. They're using ours. To stop them, we'd have to shut down all galactic communications. No trade, no coordination, no government. The Confederation would collapse within weeks." For the first time in 3,000 years, the galactic leadership faced an enemy they couldn't defeat through traditional warfare. The humans had turned information itself into a weapon, and they were winning a war without firing a shot. And in the depths of space, on ships and stations across the galaxy, young beings were discovering that maybe, just maybe, there was another way to live than the one their leaders had chosen for them. The humans had started something that couldn't be stopped, and they weren't done yet. The Grand Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime had never hosted a gathering like this one. Representatives from every member species of the Confederation sat in emergency session, their faces grim as they watched reports streaming in from across the galaxy. On the massive display screens, scenes of civil unrest played out on dozens of worlds. High Chancellor Veltarin stood at the central podium, her usual calm composure cracking under the pressure. Fellow representatives, we face a crisis that threatens the very foundation of our civilization. Human cultural contamination has spread to every corner of Confederation space. The reports were devastating. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, Altarian workers had organized something they called a strike, refusing to work until they received better living conditions. On the warrior planet of Zephyr Prime, young cadets were questioning the honor code that had governed their society for millennia. Most disturbing of all, on the hive worlds of the Serathi Collective, individuals were asserting personal identity over collective consciousness. "We must establish new laws," announced Tribunal Leader Vexmoth of the Regulatory Council. His species had maintained order through rigid rules for thousands of years. Specific regulations to counter human tactics and prevent further cultural contamination. The assembly worked for 3 days, crafting what they hoped would be the solution to the human problem. The Galactic Convention on Civilized Warfare ran to 847 pages and covered everything from acceptable weapons to proper treatment of cultural prisoners. It specifically banned information warfare, civilian participation in military actions, and the spread of destabilizing cultural concepts. Ambassador Zeth Kari raised a concern. These regulations mean nothing if the humans don't agree to follow them. We must convince them to attend a formal negotiation. "They'll come," High Chancellor Veltarin said with confidence. "We'll offer them full membership in the Confederation in exchange for accepting civilized rules of conduct. No species has ever refused such an offer." The message was sent to Earth with great ceremony. Human Ambassador Sarah Chen received it while standing in the observation deck of Earth's newest space station, looking out at the blue marble that had given birth to humanity's stubborn streak. She read the invitation twice before laughing. "They want us to come negotiate rules for how we're allowed to fight them?" Admiral Webb joined her at the observation window. "It gets better. They're offering us full Confederation membership if we agree to fight properly in the future." "Full membership in a club whose rules are designed to keep us from winning," Chen mused. "Do we go?" "Oh, we're definitely going," Webb replied with a smile that had made enemy generals nervous for decades. "We're going to give them exactly what they asked for." 1 week later, the human delegation arrived at Nexus Prime, aboard a ship that looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts. The vessel was tiny compared to the massive ceremonial ships the other species used for diplomatic missions, but it functioned perfectly well. The Confederation representatives had prepared extensively for the negotiations. They had teams of lawyers, diplomats, and cultural specialists ready to explain why their proposed rules were necessary for galactic stability. The human delegation consisted of 5 people: Ambassador Chen, Admiral Webb, Dr. Elena Vasquez, 16-year-old Marcus Chen, and, to everyone's surprise, Mayor Sarah Collins of Terra Nova Colony. High Chancellor Veltarin welcomed them with full ceremony in the Grand Assembly Hall. "Ambassador Chen, we are pleased that humanity has agreed to participate in these crucial negotiations. The future of galactic civilization may well depend on our discussions." "We're happy to be here," Chen replied cheerfully. "We've brought our full legal team." The Confederation representatives looked around, confused. "Where are your legal experts?" Dr. Vasquez stepped forward. "I'm a cultural anthropologist. I study how societies make rules and why they follow them." Marcus raised his hand. "I'm really good with computers and game theory." Mayor Collins smiled. "I've been a small-town mayor for 30 years. I know how to deal with people who think they're more important than they are." Overlord Karthek growled his disapproval. "This is not a proper delegation. Where are your military commanders? Your legal scholars? Your diplomatic corps? Admiral Webb shrugged. I'm the military commander. Sarah here handles politics better than most diplomats I've met. Elena understands your cultures better than you do. And Marcus? Well, Marcus has been running circles around your entire communication network for months. But you have no formal legal training? Tribunal leader Vexmoth protested. Neither do most of the people who wrote your laws of war, Dr. Vasquez replied calmly. I've studied them. They're not legal documents. They're cultural artifacts designed to maintain existing power structures. The negotiations began with the Confederation presenting their carefully crafted convention. For 6 hours, various representatives explained the necessity of each rule, the historical precedent for every restriction, and the logical basis for civilized warfare. The humans listened politely, took notes, and asked occasional questions that seemed innocuous, but somehow made the Confederation representatives uncomfortable. When the presentation finally ended, Ambassador Chen stood up. Thank you for that comprehensive overview. We appreciate the time and effort you've put into this document. High Chancellor Veltaran smiled with relief. Then you accept the terms? Oh, no, Chen replied cheerfully. We reject them completely. The hall erupted in shocked protests. When order was finally restored, Overlord Karthek leaned forward menacingly. On what grounds do you reject a treaty designed to bring peace to the galaxy? Mayor Collins stood up, her 73-year-old frame tiny compared to the massive alien warriors around her. Son, I've read your treaty. It's 847 pages of rules telling the little guy how he's supposed to lose politely to the big guy. That is not, Vexmoth began. Let me finish, dear, Collins continued with the patient authority of someone who had dealt with difficult people her entire life. Your rules say we can't use information warfare, but you can control all the communication networks. We can't involve civilians in fighting, but you can threaten to enslave our families. We can't use guerrilla tactics, but you can bring overwhelming force to our worlds. Dr. Vasquez activated a holographic display. We did some research into how your honorable warfare actually works. In the past 1,000 years, smaller species that followed your rules had a survival rate of approximately 8% when faced with conquest by larger species. Combat determines the strong, Karthek started. Combat determines who dies, Admiral Webb interrupted. Your whole system is rigged to make sure the same species stay on top, while everyone else either serves them or gets eliminated. You call it honor. I call it a protection racket. Marcus Chen stepped forward with the eager energy of a teenager about to deliver a devastating presentation. Want to know what's really interesting? I hacked into your historical databases. Your ancient laws of war were written by the 3 most powerful species in the galaxy at the time. Funny how all the rules favor the tactics those species were good at. The assembly hall fell silent as the implications sank in. Ambassador Chen looked around the room, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of worlds. You want us to fight fair? Fair is a weather condition. You want honor? Honor doesn't protect my people when someone stronger decides they want our planet. She gestured to the massive displays still showing scenes of unrest across the galaxy. You see chaos. We see people finally asking why they have to accept a system that guarantees their defeat. Your rules create a galaxy where only the strong survive by making sure the weak can't fight back effectively, Mayor Collins added. We're not interested in playing a game that's rigged against us. High Chancellor Veltaran's voice was strained. If every species adopts your methods, civilization will collapse into chaos. Your civilization, Dr. Vasquez corrected. A civilization built on making sure most species never get a fair chance. Maybe it needs to collapse. Admiral Webb stood up slowly, his weathered face serious. You wanted to demonstrate good faith. We could have disabled every major installation in Confederation space before we came here. We could have crashed your economies, shut down your military networks, turned your own security systems against you. He paused, letting that sink in. We didn't. We chose to come here and explain why we won't accept your rules. That's our good faith gesture. But if you refuse the convention, Veltarin began, then you'll have to learn to live in a galaxy where the little guys fight back, Chen finished. We're not going away. We're not going to start following rules designed to make us lose. And thanks to us, neither are a lot of other species. The human delegation began packing their materials. Where are you going? Karthek demanded. Home, Mayor Collins replied. We've said what we came to say. You can keep your rules. We'll keep winning. As the humans filed out of the hall, Ambassador Chen turned back one last time. Oh, and when those young people on your world start demanding freedom and fair treatment, you might want to remember that they learned those ideas are possible by watching us refuse to accept defeat gracefully. The doors closed behind them, leaving the Confederation leadership alone with the knowledge that they were facing something they had never encountered before, an enemy that refused to lose according to the rules. And across the galaxy, on worlds where young beings had been listening to human broadcasts, the real revolution was just beginning. 6 months after the failed negotiations on Nexus Prime, the galaxy had become unrecognizable. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the newly constructed Confederation Council chambers on Earth, watching as representatives from dozens of species took their seats for the first session of what journalists were calling the new Confederation. The old order was crumbling everywhere. On Altaria Prime, the workers' movement had overthrown the hereditary chancellor system and established something they called a democracy. The Zephyrian Empire was splitting apart as younger warriors questioned why honor required blind obedience to leaders who had never faced real combat. Most dramatically, the Sarathi Collective was experiencing something unprecedented, individuals leaving the hive mind to pursue personal identities. It's beautiful chaos, Dr. Elena Vasquez commented as she joined Chen at the observation window. Half the galaxy is in revolution, and the other half is trying to figure out how to adapt without being overthrown. The transformation hadn't been peaceful everywhere. Several species had chosen to fight rather than change, leading to brutal conflicts that the humans had tried to avoid. But something remarkable was happening in those wars. The rebels were winning. On the screens around the chamber, news feeds showed the latest developments. Former slave species were using human-taught guerrilla tactics to defeat their oppressors. Information networks that had once carried only approved content now carried voices of dissent and hope. Young beings across the galaxy were organizing, demanding rights their parents had never imagined possible. High Chancellor Veltarin entered the chamber with a delegation from what remained of the old Confederation leadership. Her once pristine robes were wrinkled, her usual composure replaced by exhaustion. The past months had aged her decades. Ambassador Chen, she said formally, the Altarian Provisional Government has authorized me to open formal negotiations for our admission to the new Confederation. Chen nodded respectfully. Chancellor, we've prepared quarters for your delegation. I should warn you, though, the admission process might be different from what you're used to. How so? Veltarin asked warily. Well, for starters, you'll need to explain to representatives from the 17 species you used to rule how you plan to make amends for the past few thousand years of exploitation, Chen replied. And they get to vote on whether they trust you enough to work with you. Admiral Webb approached their group, carrying a datapad with the latest intelligence reports. Chancellor, you might want to see this. The Taraxian Liberation Front just took control of their home system. They're crediting something called human-style asymmetric warfare for their success. Veltarin looked at the report with dismay. These species were peaceful for millennia. They accepted their place in the galactic order. What have you done? We showed them they had choices, Dr. Vasquez replied. Turns out accepting your place is a lot easier when you don't know there are alternatives. The formal session began with a sight that would have been impossible just a year earlier. Representatives from species that had been slaves, subjects, or second-class citizens took their places as equals beside their former rulers. The human delegation sat in a section marked Founding Members, but they were just one voice among many. Marcus Chen, now 17 and officially Earth's Director of Cultural Exchange, stood to address the assembly. 6 months ago, the old Confederation told us we had to follow their rules or face destruction. Today, we're here to write new rules together. Overlord Karthek, whose empire had shrunk to a handful of loyal worlds, stood with obvious difficulty. The once mighty warrior looked broken. Human, your people have destroyed everything we built. Millions of years of civilization reduced to chaos in less than a year. Marcus looked at the massive Zephyrian with sympathy. Sir, with respect, we didn't destroy your civilization. We just showed everyone that it wasn't the only option. A new voice interrupted the exchange. Captain Tessara of the former Zephyrian 3rd Legion stood at her designated place. But she was no longer the disciplined warrior she had once been. Her armor bore the marks of battle, but more importantly, her eyes showed something that had never been seen in a Zephyrian officer before: doubt about the old ways. Overlord Karthek, she said formally, I request permission to address this assembly. Karthek's face twisted with pain. Tessara, you were my finest officer. How can you stand with these rule breakers? Because they taught me something our honor code never did, she replied. They taught me to ask why I was fighting, not just how to fight. Tessara turned to address the full assembly. I spent 3 months trying to conquer Terra Nova Colony using traditional Zephyrian tactics. I lost more warriors in those 3 months than in my previous 20 years of service. But the humans didn't just defeat us. They showed us that there were other ways to be strong. She activated a holographic display showing video from the Terra Nova conflict. Watch this footage. See how they fight? They protect each other. They use every advantage they have. They never give up, but they also try to minimize casualties on both sides. They turned our own strength against us, but they didn't try to humiliate us. Mayor Collins, now serving as Earth's ambassador for common sense diplomacy, stood up. Captain, would you mind telling everyone what happened when your forces finally withdrew? Tessara's voice carried a note of wonder. The humans helped us repair our damaged ships. They shared medical supplies for our wounded. They treated us better after defeating us than our own command structure treated us after victories. Murmurs ran through the assembly as representatives processed this information. But the most important thing, Tessara continued, was what they did next. They offered to teach us their tactics, not as secrets to be hoarded, but as knowledge to be shared. They said that if everyone fought smarter, maybe fewer beings would have to die in wars. Dr. Vasquez activated another display showing training facilities across human space. We're calling it the Asymmetric Defense Initiative. Any species that wants to learn effective defense tactics can send representatives. We teach them everything: guerrilla warfare, information operations, economic resistance, non-violent protest, even basic negotiation skills. High Chancellor Veltaran looked horrified. You're teaching every species in the galaxy how to resist authority? We're teaching them how to resist oppression, Admiral Webb corrected. There's a difference. A legitimate government doesn't need to oppress its people to maintain order. The session continued for hours as species after species shared their stories. The common theme was remarkable. Everywhere humans had shared their unconventional tactics and ideas, the results had been the same. Oppressed populations had discovered they could resist. Weak species had learned they could defend themselves. Young beings had realized they could question the wisdom of their elders. But it wasn't all success stories. Representative Clixandra of the Hegemony Remnants spoke with bitter anger. Your liberation cost my people their home world. The rebels you inspired didn't just overthrow our government, they drove us into exile. The chamber fell silent. This was the dark side of the changes sweeping the galaxy. Ambassador Chen stood slowly. Representative Clix Andra, we're sorry for your loss. Revolution is never clean, and we can't control what people do once they decide to fight for their freedom. But I have to ask, what was your people's role in the system that the rebels overthrew? Clixandra's skin flushed with embarrassment. We were the administrative class. We managed the labor allocation for the mining operations. The slave labor allocation, Mayor Collins said gently but firmly, for the mines that worked captured beings to death. It was the system, Clixandra protested. We didn't create it. We just maintained it. And that's exactly the problem, Marcus Chen said with the brutal honesty of youth. Everyone just maintained the system. Nobody questioned whether the system should exist at all. The debate continued, but gradually a consensus emerged. The galaxy needed new rules, but not rules designed to protect the strong at the expense of the weak. They needed rules that gave everyone a fair chance to defend themselves, to grow, to choose their own paths. The final vote was closer than the humans had hoped, but decisive enough to matter. The new confederation was officially established with principles that would have been revolutionary 6 months earlier: self-determination for all species, mutual aid instead of tributary relationships, and the right to resist oppression by any means necessary. As the session ended and representatives began to file out, Overlord Karthek approached the human delegation. The massive warrior moved slowly, as if carrying an enormous weight. "Human Chen," he said to the ambassador, "my species ruled through strength for 10,000 years. We believed that might made right, that the strong deserved to command the weak. Your people have proven us wrong in ways we never imagined possible." Chen waited, sensing the Zephyrian had more to say. "I still don't understand your methods. I still believe there is honor in facing one's enemies directly. But I have seen what our honorable system created, and I have seen what your dishonorable methods can accomplish." He paused, struggling with words. Perhaps there is more than one kind of strength. 6 months later, the changes continued to ripple across the galaxy. Former slave species were building their own civilizations. Young beings across dozens of worlds were questioning authority and demanding better futures. The rigid caste systems that had maintained order for millennia were crumbling, replaced by something messier but more hopeful. In a small cafe on the rebuilt Terra Nova colony, Captain Tassara of the reformed Zephyrian Defense Corps sat across from Colonel James Murphy, sharing coffee and war stories. Outside, human and Zephyrian children played together, inventing games that combined human creativity with Zephyrian strength. "Do you think it will last?" Tassara asked, watching the children through the window. Murphy sipped his coffee thoughtfully. "The peace? Probably not. There'll be more conflicts, more wars, more species trying to dominate others." "Then what was the point?" Murphy smiled. "The point is that now everyone knows there's more than one way to fight. The little guys don't have to accept defeat gracefully anymore. The big guys can't count on their size to win automatically. It's not perfect, but it's more fair than what we had before." Tassara nodded slowly. "My people are still learning to ask why instead of just following orders. It's difficult." "Change usually is," Murphy replied. "But your young warriors are picking it up fast. Give it a generation or two, and they'll wonder how their ancestors ever lived under the old system." As the sun set over Terra Nova, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, both veterans contemplated a galaxy where the ancient laws of war had been replaced by something unprecedented: the idea that everyone deserved a fair chance to fight for their freedom. Humanity had won more than a war. They had changed the fundamental nature of how civilizations interacted, ensuring that never again would honorable defeat be the only option for the weak. The galaxy would never be the same, and for the first time in millennia, That was a good thing.